Sufi mystic, T4 from the height Moorish tradition. Perpendicular position, no longer in that bummy state. They lied to us, said we got shipped from miles away. But the old neck head slipped just like me. The flow of gift like Patriot, St. Maurice. That's charitable, these lands inheritable. We're virgin of a state inevitable. So stop the esteem, I'm on a plane out of your reach. And I ain't talking Delta seats. All metaphysics with a well-blended civics. We colleagues, not lieutenants. This guy was jealous like Musa Bendu said. True Ali revelation, Luke Morris is here. Displaying the art, Khalifa society. Make sure y'all Moorish master MC, also a grand chief. Delectable Negroes, barbecue and the clan meat. See me in my fans, won't mistake me for black man. I'll call it, might assume I'm a Masonic brother. Brown chronic lover, evil roller, edible supper. Vibrate at a high rate, turn to a dimension jumper. Hit the soul plane, quick build with the prophet. Get back to the earth plane, dismissed on the docket. Magistrate lane and vomit, janitor bring the comet. No bond, gay temple gets a deposit. Sketch not composite. Left no witness, left blue on the litmus. Get altitude sickness, so high on your head. Whenever I spit this, I'm the type to forget, so you get no forgiveness. Business is strictly like Eric and Parrish. Moreno is my status if you're speaking in Spanish. Man, my manish when I draw from the chalice. Looking like the paintings of Arabs. Tiger head rug in the palace, accepting your challenge. Final glove slap since you thought I was average. Carried by 1,000 scarabs over the hot sand. Last name comes from Moors that rule Scots land. Black or Moors you thought Elizabeth got banned. Drew Ali name known again what's not planned. Try to call me Indian, no that will not stand. Forget to say the prayer, now I feel I'm in Copland. Forgot the amethyst, start rubbing on stone shaman. Cause a glitch in the matrix, stop feds from charging. Body frozen walking past, the eyes enlarging. With a ray gun like Marvin Martian. That's all folks when we activate carbon. End it all like arson, or your face on a carton. I'm a Moorish American man, national. 360 degrees is added to my arsenal. Like a carpenter, got me building temples, but mentally. No go to, I lead the measure and stick your activities. I came here to predicate, change the negativity precisely. My purpose is to uplift humanity. So why you mad at me? Cause you know I'm a more 2,000 years with the prophet like I beg it before. Go ahead and diss the prophet cause you're so immature. When justice come knock at your door, bodies will get the floor. Like a phone, puzzle your brain just like a jigsaw. Movie cut your head off and did we play ping pong. Looking through the peephole cause you hear the ding dong. I don't sing songs, I'm the champ with no rings on. Concrete jungle gives a fuck about King Kong. I'm ready to go, but when I die I scream out yeehaw like kids y'all. Cause my last words would be Islam. What up, Mom? My higher self is keeping me this calm.
Islam, Moors, peace and love. Let's get our East going on. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through His holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, Islam. Prophet warns all Muslims, governors to read proclamation at each meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical, agitating speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Noble Drew Ali, Islam. To be proclaimed at every meeting. Islam. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people on our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I am calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Drew Ali. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam. This is the instruction from your prophet Noble Drew Ali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is now on, but the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, Noble Drew Ali. And that's why many hearts have been turned to stone. Many have eyes to see but cannot see, ears to hear but cannot hear, lest they would be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but would sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah would bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Islam to all the Moors worldwide. We're here again for Canaanland Moors Sunday meetings. Today, we're just going to be discussing a book that I fell into called The Barbarous Years. One second. The Barbarous Years. Part of this thing with the barbarous years also gets into the state immunity acts that they have here to protect themselves, and for our people to get an understanding that all these different acts that have been created, all these acts disguised as law that have been created, are directly relative to making sure that they can't be held liable for the criminal actions that they have done on this land to the indigenous Aboriginal people. We know that as far as the acts go, there's no power in them unless they're given power. And the way that majority of these color of law and color of authority acts are given power is through colored people, people of color, stateless people, people who don't adhere to and do not acknowledge or recognize the power or the importance of nationality, which again goes back to Noble Drew Ali and everything that he stated for the Moors. So when we go to, and remember, this is not Moors talking, so don't get mad at Moors and debate Moors about this stuff. This is what they say. And this is so you can get why they did what they did. How did they have this power? Where did they get this from? From the Aboriginal Indigenous people not being themselves. So because they don't want to be themselves, their law does not apply to them. So laws have to be created in order to apply. And majority of the time, the law that's created has nothing to do with respecting or honoring the rights of the indigenous people of the land. It's about getting them out of circulation. So the State Immunity Act that they use to stand on, which is why, again, a lot of the activity that Moors partake in should be geared in national affairs activity. It shouldn't be frivolous things, beat a ticket or whatever. It should be doing things to let the world at large, specifically foreigners in our own land, recognize what it is that we are about. Not them guessing or assuming or wondering, I wonder what those Moors are about. Them knowing without a shadow of a doubt. Just like they let us know what they're about without a shadow of a doubt. As soon as you see a highwayman, you already know what they're about. There's not even any questions. Right? So, again, with all these acts, you know that they create the power to define things. So the power to define is on them because of their act. Just like our land. So the power to define as far as land jurisdiction is on the Aboriginal Indigenous people. But they better know what they're talking about before they start giving definitions to things. Or again, you're going to have these situations, right? So in this act, agency of a foreign state means any legal entity that is an organ of the foreign state, but that is separate from the foreign state. Canada, U.S., those are foreign states. And all these different entities that have been created are organs of the foreign state. But really, they're together. There's no separation of these organs from the foreign state. The only reason that they're separate from the foreign state is because the foreign state knows that these organs are going to be engaging in illegal activity, and they don't want to be held liable with the organs. But it's all of them are the same, and it has to be etched in the mind of the people that all these institutions, organizations, legal entities, whatever, once they're signed off on by a foreigner, they're foreign. And don't get caught up with Moors trying to tell you foreign state, and then you the Moor is foreign when it comes to that state. No, that state has no jurisdiction. That state itself is foreign. I'm not foreign. I'm in my own land. They're foreign. Don't ever let Moors put on you that you're foreign to something when you're in your own land. You're in your own land, so you can't be foreign. Foreign is those who aren't from this land. So when they say United States, Canada, Moors are foreign to that. No, Moors aren't foreign to that. Moors have nothing to do with that. The term doesn't apply like that. The only way foreign applies is if you're talking about a foreigner, not, you know, I'm foreign from the table because the table's there and I'm here, so the table's a table and I'm a human, so I'm foreign. You're not even in the table jurisdiction. There's not even anything to be foreign from. Commercial activity means any particular transaction, act, or conduct, or any regular course of conduct that by reason of its nature is of a commercial character. Any particular transaction, act, or conduct, right? This is an act, right? State Immunity Act. Any act. This is not what they're saying. This is what we're saying. So you can understand that these people are all about their commerce. That's all they're about. Human trafficking. So the foreign state has all these different legal entities, and all these legal entities from federal down to municipal are going to be playing identification games and registration games and whatever other games that they're playing. All those are commercial activity. And they must be looked at as such to have a clear understanding of where it is we're supposed to be, to have a clear understanding of who it is we're supposed to be, and to have a clear understanding or overstanding of what we're supposed to be doing. Because there gets into this thing of Moors have, you know, 500 bookshelves, and then none of the stuff is applied outside of where the bookshelves at. When everything should be applied, or there should be attempts at least to apply it. And then if it doesn't work, then you go and then you try to apply something else. Because everything has a place. These foreigners have a place. We have a place. Our place has been negligible. Our place has not followed the protocol of the Moorish nation, which is being active, not passive. And the only reason that they can do things like this, interpret what they want, have their own definitions of things, etc., is because Moors haven't done their job. So being that we're in this new era of time now, when all men must have their free national name and all that, then it's time for Moors to be more active in their maneuvering on their land. And it has to happen from Moors. It's any colorable individual claiming to be active in any arena is a fiction. And that's not really activity. Has nothing to do with activity. Right? And again, remember that, you know, like for example, we're talking about this, that if we weren't talking about our rights or whatever like that since 85, then they have since 85 on us, because we were probably Negro black colored in 85 while they were playing state immunity. But again, the only reason they could play state immunity is because the actual people gave up that jurisdiction to them to play these games. The people gave up the jurisdiction to them. And we'll see how in a little bit. Foreign state includes any sovereign or other head of the foreign state or of any political subdivision of the foreign state while acting as such in a public capacity. Any government of the foreign state or any political subdivision of the foreign state, including any of its departments and any agencies of the foreign state, and any political subdivision of the foreign state. So once again, they have to be acknowledged as being the foreign state. Right? They have to be acknowledged as being the foreign state. The foreign state can't be them saying somebody's foreign, because this is not their land. The only reason, again, that they talk like that is because of our people being negligent of knowing what's going on in the world and getting caught up in the illusion that's been created by these foreigners in land that's not theirs. And once you get caught up in the illusion of it, it's automatically going to fall on them as far as the power and the sovereignty and whatever else. Because at this point, we're not supposed to be caught up in the illusion. It's not supposed to be that we don't know at this point. We have to know. We have to be competent. Like we say with Moors all the time. If you're talking about Moorish nationality and birthrights and all that, once you're speaking that language, you have to be competent. You can't speak that language and not be competent, because your incompetence is why they could do things like this. The incompetence is why they can have the power in our land to create acts and then push these acts as law. Because the incompetent people are going to be saying, oh yeah, that's the act of whatever, you should follow that, you shouldn't follow that. That's the law. Political subdivision. Political subdivision means a province, state, or other like political subdivision of a foreign state that is a federal state. So they go back again. Foreign state includes any sovereign or other head of the foreign state or of any political subdivision of the foreign state. That's them. They're that. United States and Canada, they're that. The political subdivisions are the states, the provinces, the cities, and all the stuff that they created that has a charter and a date. Don't look at them talking as, when they talk, they're not including themselves when they say foreign state. They're included in foreign state. And it's Moors that have to bring this type of information, this type of perspectives to our people so they can get on board with what it is we're trying to get done, which is the unification of our people in our own land so we can get some stuff done for our posterity. Until that happens, Moors who have this information, keep unifying, keep connecting with whoever it is you can connect with in your jurisdiction and create what needs to be created in that jurisdiction where you are. Terrorist activity in respect of a foreign state has the same meaning as subsection 8301 of the Criminal Code, provided that a foreign state set out on the list referred to in subsection 6 does the act or omission on or after January 1st, 1985. So this is what brought us up to the barbarous years, the peopling of British North America. The barbarous years, the peopling of British North America, the conflict of civilizations, 1600 to 1695. So when they say the terrorist act or terrorist activity in respect to a foreign state is set out on the list referred to and does not, and set out in the list referred to in subsection 6.1, 2, does the act or omission on or after January 1st means that they're taking everything that they did prior to January 1st, 1985, not as terrorist activity. When we're going to clearly see that these people are engaging in terrorist activity. And not only were they doing it then, they're still doing it right now. And if they're speaking from this perspective of exercising terrorist activity, but we're not going to call it that if it happened before 1985, then that lets you know the fraudulence of the act even that they're using to try to push this idea that they're whatever, the power, they're the government, they're the free people, they're whatever it is. They're actually really just taking the people's rights from them. Meaning of supports terrorism. For the purpose of this act, a foreign state supports terrorism if it commits for the benefit of or otherwise in relation to a listed entity as defined in subsection 8301 of the Criminal Code, an act or omission that is or had it been committed in Canada would be punishable under sections 83 to 83.04 to 83.18 to 83.23 of the Criminal Code. There was an article that we'll go over with regard to these acts of terrorism, so we can be real time with where these Europeans are at and what they know and are familiar with regard to them in this land. Right? The shocking savagery of America's early history. Bernard Bailyn, that's the author of the book, The Barbarous Years. And if you have any questions or whatever, just put it in the chat. The shocking savagery of America's early history. Let's go down. Bailyn has not painted a pretty picture. Little wonder he calls it the barbarous years and spares us no details of the terror, desperation, degradation, and widespread torture. Do you really know what being flayed alive means? The skin is torn from the face and head, and the prisoner is disemboweled while still alive. And yet, somehow, amid the merciless massacres, were elements that gave birth to the rudiments of civilization, or in Bailyn's evocative phrase, the fragile integument of civility. that would evolve 100 years later into a virtual Renaissance culture, a bustling string of self-government, self-sufficient, defiantly expansionist colonies alive with an increasingly sophisticated and literate political and intellectual culture that would coalesce into the rational for the birth of American independence, all the while shaping and sometimes misshaping the American character. It's a grand drama in which the glimmers of enlightenment barely survive the savagery. What Yeats called the blood-dimmed tide, the brutal establishment of slavery, the race wars with the original inhabitants that Balin is not afraid to call genocidal, the full, horrifying details of which have virtually been erased. So in the colonial mind, they have the right to self-governing. They have the right to self-sufficiency. They have the right to expand their colonies and whatever. But the indigenous people aren't able to do that. And the indigenous people can't do that. And it's only because these people, Aboriginal and indigenous people, are taking the position of not acknowledging who their ancient foremothers and forefathers were, and assuming that they're something that they're not. When we go back again to this idea of the state immunity, they have this set up so that the court that you're going to go to when you claim that they did something to you or whatever, the court is going to give effect to the immunity. Not what they did or how they did it, but the court is going to be the one who is stating that, no, you can't whatever because they're immune, right? The example we always use is Grand Chief Nature in 2004 suing Asbury Park Police Department, and the judge ruling that, oh, well, that's diversity of citizenship. That's state immunity that they're using under the guise of diversity. There's not really diversity of citizenship because they're not citizens. They're foreigners. They don't have citizenship. You can't be citizen of Walmart and claim you have immunity, state immunity. You can't claim ultra vires statute because you're a citizen of Walmart. It's a fiction. But people don't look at it as a fiction. They look at it, they're a court, and the court said, and the judge said, and the magistrate said, and the bailiff and the stenographer, all of them are colored. And what they're really exercising is their state immunity, which allows them to do the terrorist activity that they've been doing, that they continue to do, that they will continue to do. And it's not something that they just started doing. They've been doing this. They've been pushing this idea. To barbarous years, the peopling of British North America, page 455. But simply to banish Hutchinson along with Wheelwright and the other opinionists was not enough. The specter of a violent uprising of a millennial frenzy leading to a bloody rebellion against constituted authority, the ultimate threat that burned in the deep recesses of the Puritan radicalism, could not so easily be dissipated. The fear of a satanic conspiracy in the guise of a fanatical religion persisted. the fear of precisely the kind of murderous, suicidal rampage that the Fifth Monarchy zealots were capable of. Drastic, precisely targeted measures were necessary to head off such violent prospects. On November 20th, the court, noting that Wheelwright and Hutchinson's opinions and revelations had seduced and led into dangerous errors many of people here, and that there was a consequence, just cause of suspicion that they, as others in Germany, in former times, may upon some revelation make some sudden eruption upon those that differ from them, ordered 75 men, chiefly Bostonians, to surrender all their guns, pistols, swords, powder, shot, and match to designated authorities. Failure to do so would incur a fine of 10 pounds for each weapon concealed. And further, the same suspects were denied the right to buy or borrow such weapons, though magistrates might exempt from the order any who acknowledge their sin in subscribing to the seditious libel, or at least acknowledge it evil. Now remember, that's talking about, we're even talking about indigenous people there. We're talking about these Europeans. These Europeans who realize that there's an issue. There's a jurisdictional issue with the people who are claiming to have certain powers. The court ruled that these individuals who, quote unquote, Bostonian, which that's a fiction. Now, you know, Bostonians, that's a fiction. There's no people called Bostonians unless they're modern Europeans pretending like they're from over here. But there's no such thing as Bostonians, and go through the line of all the different cities, you know, Torontonians and all that. All those are colonial fictitious terms that they created because of their power to define. Because the power to define is going to be on them once you start using their reference points, which is why, again, it's for the Aboriginal and Indigenous people, the Moors, to start redefining and putting the word on our people that they have the power to define, but you don't try to define as Negro, black, colored, or some other stateless being, because you really don't have the power to do that. And as soon as you do it, they're going to kick it right back into the realm where they have the control. But even that did not satisfy the worried authorities. Remember, we're talking about Europeans right now. The Europeans were worried that the Europeans are going to overthrow them. But even that did not satisfy the worried authorities. The court, sensible of the great disorders growing and the contempts we have of late been put upon the civil authority, ordered that anyone who defamed a court of law, its proceedings, or its judges would be fined, imprisoned, disenfranchised, or banished. And if the court itself became corrupted and magistrates abused their own colleagues for their opinions or rulings, such offenders were to be sharply reproved by the governor. If they persisted, they were to be punished by fines or imprisonment. So they're letting you know that the authority really comes through the governor. Hence, people could talk about whatever and say whatever and all that stuff, but Governor General is the one who has the power here. He might sit in the back. You know, see them on the news and all that stuff. You're gonna see all the, what do they call them in the State Act? All the all the political subdivisions of the foreign state. You're going to hear them talk. Only if it's something big are you going to hear Governor General talk. Because if back then a judge is going to make a ruling and a governor could step in and say, nah, that's not how that goes. Right? If judges could be sharply reproved by the governor, that means that the judges really don't have any power. Why? Because they're not judges. And the only way that they're a judge with power is if the Aboriginal and Indigenous people get murdered or face terrorist activity. They either become passive or they become dead or whatever like that, and then somebody steps into that place, which is the situation that you're seeing right now with all these Europeans upset and raiding capitals and all that, because they thought they can sit in the seat of the people and they could be able to do whatever because they're European and the government's European, so they're going to look out for them. No, they're not. They're stateless too, because they're also a foreigner, and they've been showing allegiance to Walmart for all these years, thinking that it was citizenship. Now that these people are talking about passing bills so that transvestites could teach their children and stuff like that, now they're mad. Don't get mad. That's what you signed up for. And all you got to do is put the stuff back into the hands of the indigenous people so things get back to where they're supposed to be. You're not going to do that? No problem. All the BS continues that we're complaining about. Because you can't take the place of the indigenous people and then claim you have their powers or their rights or whatever. It doesn't work like that. You have to be Aboriginal and indigenous to the land. And again, the only way that they get away with this stuff is because of our people passing all this color stuff off as a reality, when the color stuff is not a reality. All of it is fiction. Right? All of it. Everything that they present has been from a fictitious position, and we've bought into it, into the fictitious position, which allowed them to do whatever it is that they're doing, on top of the people whose duty it was to make sure that this is where it goes. Back to the Smithsonian article. In truth, I didn't think anyone sat around erasing it. Balin tells me when I visit him in his spacious document-stuffed study in Harvard's Widener Library. He's a wiry, remarkable, fit-looking fellow, energetically jumping out of his chair to open up a file drawer and show me copies of one of his most prized document finds, the handwritten British document survey records of America-bound colonists made in the 1770s, which lists the name, origin, occupation, and age of the departing one of the few islands of hard data about who the early Americans were. Nobody sat around erasing this history, but it's forgotten. Conveniently, I asked. Yes, he agrees. Look at the peaceful pilgrims. Or William Bradford. He goes on to see the Pequot War battlefield, and he is appalled. He said, the stink of heaps of dead bodies was too much. Balin, in speaking of one of the early and bloodiest encounters between our peaceful pumpkin pie-eating pilgrims and the original inhabitants of the land, they want to seize the Pequots. But for Balin, the mercenary motive is less silent than theological, is less salient than theological. The ferocity of that little war is just unbelievable, Balin says. The butchering that went on cannot be explained by trying to get hold of a piece of land. They were really struggling with this central issue for them of the advent of the Antichrist. Suddenly, I felt a chill from the wintry New England air outside enter into the warmth of his study. The ancestors talking. The Antichrist, the haunting figure presaging the apocalypse from the book of Revelations, plays an important part in Balin's explanation of the European settlers' descent into unrestrained savagery. The key passage on this question comes late in his new book when Balin makes explicit a connection I had not seen before between the physical savagery the radical dissenting Protestant settlers of America wreaked on the original inhabitants and the intellectual savagery of their polemical attacks on the church and state authorities they fled from in Europe, and the savagery of vicious insult and vile denunciation they wreaked upon each other as well. So we look at why they came over here, right? They were against the church and state authorities where they were from. Then they came here and then instilled the same church and state authority that they were running from here on the indigenous people. And keep in mind, a lot of the people that they did bring over here, as far as European colonists, were the savages from over there. Remember, we were reading from the book Dirt for the past couple classes, the past couple uploads, right? And the conditions that these people were facing over there in Europe were dismal compared to what was going on in the land of milk and honey with the Aboriginal and indigenous people. And we have to ask ourselves what it is that made us fall to this savagery. They don't outnumber us. There's not more Europeans on the planet than Asiatics. When you see them standing on mountains of buffalo skulls or whatever that they destroyed when they were here, and you think about things that is relative with regard to the Barbary wars over here, right? Remember, the barbarous years is about them murdering the Berbers, the Barbary powers of the Americas being dissolved by foreigners who came here. How is it that they got to do this? Because remember, the savagery of vicious insult and vile denunciation, they also wreaked upon themselves. So it's not like we're looking at all these Europeans. We're looking at a little pocket of Europeans that came over here and did some stuff on this magnitude, right? They did this as a minority. It wasn't a majority of them. It was a minority of them. But history repeats itself. So when they're talking about all this infighting going on between them, what kind of infighting was going on between us to get us to the position of them just being able to come here and slaughter all our ancestors. Which again goes back to the point of the importance of noble duality, the importance of nationality, which brings the unity, the importance of the 5 principles that we deal with things according to love instead of hate, so that we can move forward without the backbiting and the two-facing and the nitpicking with each other. And the only reason that even that's going on is because of people on our side of the nation, like Drew Ali said, that thought this was only a joke and unreal. Because these are the colonists, or the people in the city hall or whatever, that Drew Ali said, yo, go ask them. Nobody racist against our people. We had our own issues that we weren't dealing with. Just like today, we have our own issues that we're not dealing with. People talk about generational curses and all this. That's our issues that we never dealt with. That right now have families bickering with each other. They don't even have that stuff together, the family stuff. They're definitely not going to have no nation stuff together if you can't even get along with your brother, sister, and aunt and uncle or whatever. It's a repetition of how they felt. Because what do? They claim the power, so now we adopt their mindset because they're claiming power. No, we're supposed to be going back to the mindset of our ancient foremothers and forefathers again, which is the importance of noble Drew Ali, and why it is what he presented to the Asiatics in America is for the salvation of the people. What he presented is for the salvation of the people. Do the people want it? That's up to them. But I guarantee you that they should probably give high consideration to what was presented to them by the prophet. Because these people coming out telling them, yeah, we're gonna swab your anus or whatever for COVID now. And you still don't think that these people are terrorists and attacking you? You're supremely off. And again, that's how they get their power, which is again why talking to Moors is useless, because Moors already got this info. It's about Moors getting this info out to our people, because Moors already know what's up. It's the people who don't know that need to know what's up immediately. And they've been supposed to know what's up. That's like somebody tagged me in something today with 19 Keys singing some Rick Ross song about black dollars and all this. That's a fiction. That's not a reality. All these people are practicing the same savagery that the European practice on us. Because if they can have their big chain and their car with the rims and all that stuff and talk about, oh yeah, well, we're conscious, we should be able to have money too as conscious people, they're tripping. They're the same mindset as the colonizer. They're the exact same mindset as the colonizer. And that needs to get checked. But don't expect colonizer to check it, because colonizer already knows. Colonizer already knows. Once you get the minds of the people, you don't even got to worry about the body. The body's going to do what the mind, and they got European mindset, then colonials have the power. The savagery of the theological struggle, the bitterness of the main contenders, and the deep stain it left on the region's collective memory were driven by elemental fears peculiar to what was experienced as a barbarous environment. Fears of what could happen to civilized people in any unimaginable wilderness, in which God's children, as they thought of themselves, were fated to struggle with pitiless agents of Satan, pagan antichrists, swarming in the world around them. The two kind of struggle, physical and metaphysical, were one. Threats from within to the soul merge with threats from without to form a heated atmosphere of apocalyptic danger. Bernard Bailyn made his reputation when he took upon himself the Leviathan task of cataloging the store of pro-Revolutionary War era pamphlets, the denunciations and speculations and accusations privately published by surprisingly illiterate gentlemen farmers, Greek and Roman quoting tradesmen, the Ebenezers, as I think of them, most of whose colorful and thoughtful works had not been read for 2 centuries. He drew on that knowledge base to write The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, which won him the first of his 2 Pulitzers after it was published in 1967. Bailyn could have coasted on that success, researching and publishing on the multitude of controversies still raging over the meaning of the Revolution and the Declaration and the Constitution, going forward the way most historians have done. But instead, he did something unusual. He stepped backwards, not just in time, but in spatial perspective, in spatial perspective, that he had what he would call his cosmic eye on the grand vision of the massive westward movement from Europe to Africa to North and South America that began before 1492. And he chronicled it in his subsequent book, Voyagers to the West. In examining the interactions of 4 continents bordering the Atlantic and seeing them as a single, mutually interacting whole, he reshaped the modern history profession and helped create what is known as Atlantic history. From 1500, he wrote in an earlier book, it has involved the displacement and resettlement of over 50 million people, and it has affected indirectly the lives of uncountable millions more. But Bailyn's cosmic eye saw even deeper. He wanted to capture not just the physical movements, but also the interior experiences, the quality of their culture, the capacity of their minds, the patterns of their emotions. He wanted to look inside the heads and read minds. Bailyn's voyage was a monumentally ambitious project, a voyage through unmapped oceans of data, analogous to the Columbus era, explorers settling on the vast uncharted ocean. The opening sections of his new book stands out for his profoundly sensitive appreciation of the sensibility of the original inhabitants who he introduces simply as Americans rather than Native Americans. So these are the level of the modern Europeans who know that something's wrong. These are the model. Bailyn, Peter Moon, Rick Smith, all these individuals who are foreigners here that have an appreciation for the Aboriginal and Indigenous culture, the Aboriginal and Indigenous way of life, and reintroducing concepts that might have been lost by the people. For example, him classifying the Native Americans as Americans, not Native Americans. Because he's already gone through the historical gauntlet to see what his people did here and knows what they did here. knows the lengths that they went in order to exercise this savagery on the true Americans. Then, after they do their savagery, claim that they're the Americans and mislabel all the indigenous people so that the millions of generations after they murdered their foremothers and forefathers, the millions of generations after would have no clue as to what it is was going on, which again goes back to why Noble Drew Ali had to be sent by Allah for our people. Expresses profoundly why Noble Drew Ali was sent. And with regard to what he presented, how he presented it, and the impact that what he presented had on the indigenous people in the 1920s shows, one, that these people were wrong in everything that they did to be over here. Right? They were wrong in everything that they did. They weren't in the position to be able to tell the story that they're telling. The story that they're telling is based in our people not knowing their own story. So a story has to be told. And like we found out with when we had that lawyer thing with the different attorneys or whatever, right? And Artie coming out with his savagery, right? That, well, we won the war, so of course we get to do what we want. It does, yeah, to the victor goes the spoils, but if those spoils are based in murder and pillaging and raping and all that stuff, that's not good. That's not something for you to be proud of, that you did that. Which again, on the European side of things, which is why the Europeans who are realizing something's wrong can't be playing the US citizen and all that stuff. They got to be playing the ipso jure mores subject, because everybody know that their establishment goes back to the treaty with US and Morocco. They know this. But if they can avoid that and go back to pre those times so that they can play their little authority game, then the savagery continues, which is why the savagery has continued with our people, and more so against them. Because these people are using their state immunity, right? They're using their ultra vires statutes. They have their own judge in there, no different than Trump was showing these people. Oh yeah, I'll just put my own judges in there, put my own whatever in there, so that I can send anything over, and then they're gonna sign off on everything. All right. Back to the barbarous. He spoke of the issues at length and demanded written responses of the counselors. Ideas were exchanged. Just and sufficient causes were searched for and found. At this point, Stuyvesant opposed the war, was outvoted, then equivocally until pressure from the panicked settlers, fearful for their lives, forced him to launch the war, which, like its predecessors, was fought barbarously and mercilessly, yet not without a sense of guilt and self-reproach. By 1660, after waves of raids and murders on both sides, he justified aggressive, unbounded war on the grounds that the natives were the barbarous savages, a species apart, incapable of and unfettered by laws, governance, and rational negotiation. So 1600s, 1660, Europeans' mindset is that the indigenous are the barbarous savages and species apart, incapable of whatever like that. But then in 1700s, they're going to these same indigenous people to help them write constitutions and declarations of independence and articles of confederation. It's a fiction. These people knew exactly what they did when they came here. They knew exactly what their plan was. This was land of milk and honey. This was, again, when we read dirt, no wonder they wanted to come over here. No wonder they wanted to get out of Europe. No wonder they didn't want to be under the Brits, the Britons. Because they had nothing. They didn't have anything to call their own. They had absolutely nothing. And what does somebody who has nothing do? Find somebody with something, kick their door and rob their house. And then that guy's the criminal who kicked in the door and robbed the guy who had all the stuff. Especially if you go into his house and take his stuff. The story of New Netherland is not a tale of tragedy. Donna Merwick writes in Exploring the Moral Dilemmas of the Dutch, but the record of the Dutch encounter with the native population is a tragedy. The Dutch acted out a betrayal of ideas and accepted values, betrayal of themselves and others. They reaped the shame and the sorrow. By 1664, the Indians' world in coastal North America had been utterly transformed, their lifeways disrupted and permanently distorted. The demographic losses had been catastrophic. By 1630s, the Algonquin population of Virginia, which once numbered between 14,000 and 22,000, was nearing a state of collapse. By 1656, the once proud overlords of the Virginia Plain were reported to be in absolute subjugation to the English. By 1669, a census revealed that the population had been literally disseminated. 2,000 survivors, banished from their ancestral lands, were hauled on reservations, tributaries to some 25,000 Europeans. By then, 90% of the estimated 125,000 Algonquin-speaking natives of southern New England had been wiped out by epidemics related to contact with Europeans, 1619 to 1639, and by warfare that had destroyed at least 10% of the rest. So when we're talking from 1492 right up until the 1600s, you're talking about dirt Europeans coming over here. They don't have any culture. They're not civilized people. They were the barbarous savages. And what do? Stop listening to the foremothers and forefathers? Because all these Aboriginal and indigenous people who were in this land, they had a history, an oral history of their ancestors telling them, watch when the red man comes here. Watch when these white people come here. Now there's a difference between the two, because you already know that the quote-unquote white is a status. So when you read the South American history of them saying the ancestors coming back and they're white or whatever, that's who they thought they were. Out of some supreme ignorance. There's no way they had to have thought that these people were the ancestors returning if they're just going to let them come in the tribe, let them, pick somebody to be their mate or whatever like that, knowing that just looking at them, they know that something's wrong here. Who are these people? Where they come from? Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Come on down to the tribe and all that. No, no, we don't do that today. Our ancestors definitely weren't doing that back then. But this is the game that was played with our people. Again, going back to the importance of us knowing the history. Because if history and law are relative, then knowing the history is going to help us deal with these people in law. And dealing with these people in law doesn't mean marching and picketing up and down the place or whatever. It means like every other civilized being. When you get violated, you sue people. The problem is that we want to sue as some fiction name, which gives them right back the power. And again, with the Grand Sheik nature, why they were able to do what they did with him, because his suit wasn't in class action, meaning everybody in New Jersey realizes that, hold on a second, this is New Jersey, this is indigenous land. And these people who are claiming this is New Jersey are foreigners. Who are they? Police, whoever, mayor, whoever, governor, whoever, whatever. Okay, all these people are foreigners. Let's all come together and sue them instead of this one individual who, as we know, when he put his suit in as a body, not an individual, when he put his suit in as a body, as a class action, they still outweighed it. On top of using color and everything else that they're going to use at their disposal because of our people's ignorance and our people's lack of recognizing what's going on. And they've been doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over with our people. Over and over and over and over. The same thing, same pattern. Honors to the Moors for waking up. Honors to the modern Europeans for waking up. But we have work to do to change these paradigms. Because until these paradigms are changed, only the Moors benefiting or only the modern Europeans who are righteous benefiting, there ain't no benefit, really. If everybody can't be free, nobody's free. That's the Smithsonian. He captures that sensibility as well as any attempt I've read. Their world was multitudinous, densely populated by active, sentient, and sensitive spirits, spirits with consciences, memories, and purposes that surround them, instructing them, impine them on their lives at every turn, no less real for being invisible. The world, the whole of life was a spiritual enterprise. The universe, in all its movements and animations and nature, was suffused with spiritual potency. This is what Balin realized about the indigenous people. What the savage realized about the indigenous people is that we could put guns to these people right now. We could put swords and axes to these people right now because they're too busy caught up in their sensitive spirits and spirits with consciousness and memories and all that stuff. And they have no thought in their mind about defending themselves against something. Why wouldn't they have that? They obviously thought these people weren't who they were. If they knew these people were savages, you think they would let their guard down, talking about spirituality and all this? Something had to get them to not see their people or see the foreigners as savage and defend themselves. As soon as they seen them, immediately go get the stuff. Go get whatever it is that we got to defend ourselves, because who are these people? Where they come from? Why whatever? Something had to register in their mind. And then it also goes to the tribes who were in line of getting obliterated, that somebody had to go tell them, hey, we just got raided by some people. We don't know who these people are. You guys better get your stuff together. Nobody said anything. Now we look at it today. We could see that Noble Drew Ali's reference to this being divine and being national implies that now, at the time of him presenting this to the Moors, we were comfortable. We were good to be able to do that. We had enough in place that we can be active, right? Because remember, just saying the world was multitudinous, densely populated by active, sentient, and sensitive spirits. We are those. Those aren't something that's out there that we're trying to connect to. We are the sentient, sensitive spirits. We are the spirits with consciousness. It's our memories and our purposes that were surrounding us and instructing us. We're talking about Drew Ali's time. It was our spirits. It was us, ourselves, not some out of body existence, right? The whole life was a spiritual enterprise that revolved and came back around again when Noble Drew Ali was on the scene. That we were God and man again, and we were doing the things necessary to make all the other people Allah and man. In person, Balin expresses an almost poetic admiration for this sort of spirituality. All the world was alive, he exclaimed, and the wind is alive, and the mountains are alive. Then he adds, but it's not a terrible, peaceful world. They were always involved in warfare, partly because life would become imbalanced in a way that needed justification and response and reprisal. And reprisals within their lives are very important, but partly the onus is on the threats that they're under. Would both civilizations have been better off had they not been forced into contact, I ask? Or if all the colonies on the verge of failing had in fact failed and the two civilizations continued separately merely as trading partners? Well, the Indians were not genocidal on the whole. Their effort, even the 1622 massacre, which he calls genocidal in his book, was not to wipe the Europeans off the face of the map. It's the English, after the massacre, who write these letters saying, wipe them off the map. So even as the Aboriginal Indigenous people, with all the power, the purpose wasn't what they did to us. The purpose wasn't murder all of them so that we can be the whatever. That's not what the purpose was. Because remember, we had our own issues with our own. Always. Always. When we're dealing with our people, that element is always there. Infighting. Wars between ourselves. For whatever reason, that was always there. That was the balance. Somebody else now injecting themselves into that creates an imbalance. Because now you have them taking sides who are against each other taking sides who are against each other, and then having those two sides who are against each other under the guise of this European whatever going out and murdering somebody. This is how they were able to do it as a minority. And again, Europeans are retroactive. They don't have their own. So this is the same stuff that they're doing today. This is the same stuff that they're doing today. If you have any questions or comments, you could put them in the chat. The Indians had the view they wanted to use them. They wanted the English there on the fringe so they can have the benefit of their treasure, their goods, even their advanced weapons. They wanted that, but under their control. It didn't exactly work out that way. Balin does not let either of the two adversary cultures off the hook. He recounts little vignettes of the original inhabitants' behavior, such as this. Following the ambush of 4 Dutch traders, Balin quotes a report. One had been eaten after having been well roasted. The other 2 they burnt. The Indians carried a leg and an arm home to be divided amongst their families. And on the other side, consider the fixture of grade school Thanksgiving pageants. Miles Standish, an upstanding, godly pilgrim stalwart, who does not at all seem to be the sort of man who would have cut off the head of a chief and brought it back to Plymouth in triumph, where it was displayed on the blockhouse together with a flag made of cloth soaked in the victim's blood. Happy Thanksgiving. What happened, Balin continues, is a legacy of brutality in intercultural relations developed through this period, of which, of course, the overwhelming legacy was slavery. Balin points out that although there were only a few thousand slaves in the colonies toward the end of King Philip's War in the 1670s, where he concludes the barbarous years, the rules of chattel slavery were set. Now, again, goes back to this idea of a warped history of our people that this European knows. This European knows that there were only a few thousand slaves in the colonies in the 1670s. A few thousand. So where do they get all these millions from? The Aboriginal Indigenous people. Because the rules of chattel slavery were already set. How? Because you have all these pockets of European colonists manipulating sides in wars, having people to be on their side, and then the people on their side, who are the Aboriginal Indigenous people, going out and fighting on their behalf. And then when the war is done, Aboriginal people either lose their head or they have nowhere to go back to. Divide and conquer. Easy. All you need is one trader. Because the one trader is going to know the ins and outs of everything. Know where to go, know when not to go, know when they're going to pass that pass or whatever, know when they're going to use this, when they're going to use that. And again, it was on both sides. Just like I said, there are some indigenous people that hatchet some colonists and bring them home. You don't got no food and anything like that. We'll hatch up some Europeans. We know that there were cannibal cultures. We know that. That's not right. Well, when you look at it, who's who's really not guilty. Everybody's guilty. Everybody dropped the ball in some way, shape, or form. There's no, well, the indigenous people are the innocent ones, and then the Europeans are, no. Everybody's at fault. And it keeps coming right back around to why the prophet was sent, why he was brought to balance the books, because stuff was crazy out of balance. Got the land back, got the statuses back, so everybody's where they're supposed to be at. We're Moors, we're Aboriginal indigenous to the land. You're foreign modern Europeans. You don't have any authority here because we now have the mandate for the land that you've been using for the past 300-400 years under the guise of you're a country. No, you're not. You're a private corporation. And you're now under Chapter 11. You're bankrupt. So either go back to Europe or figure out something different. And they figured out something different, which is, again, why, just like what they did with all the chiefs, cut the chief's head off, have it on the table for Thanksgiving, and then now all the Indians, they don't even know what to do with themselves. And what are they going to do? No different than if you're looking at the gangs and whatever else. They take the head. Either everybody's going to forget this and they're going to go do something else, or they're going to join the people who just took the head of the leader. That's how it always goes. That's the exact same thing NOI did. Take the head. And then everybody who was following the head is going to be riding with the people who took the head. And so the legacy of the barbarous years continued beyond the white male liberation of the revolution. Balin is fascinating when he speaks of questions of value. The day we talked was a peak of the fevered notion that the American government should settle its national debt by minting a platinum coin arbitrarily given $1 trillion valuation. And it made me think of wampum, the original inhabitants' currency. I'd always wondered how you could found an entire centuries-long economics on beads and shells in the way these Americans did. And yet, isn't that what we've done since? Basing our economics on shiny metal objects that have a declared consensus value unrelating to their worth as a metal? So I asked Balin why wampum was accepted in exchange for an obviously more highly valuable commodity such as furs. Balin, their little shells, me. But why should people massacre each other over these little shells? Balin, because they had great value. Me, because of their beauty? Balin, no, because they're hard to make and they don't exist everywhere. You ever see how this was done? He picks up an imaginary shell from his desk and says, okay, they have a shell like this, and then they have to bore a hole all the way down through the middle of the thing in order to hitch it to the next one and do it with certain color regularities. It's hard to do, and it becomes of value. Me thinking of home beating kits my mother had, doesn't it seem arbitrary? Balin concedes he's not up on wampum literature. There's wampum literature, I ask. You think I'm kidding? There are wampum experts, and they don't fool around. Our wampum discussion leads to the fascinating fair price controversy in the Puritan communities, the argument over how much profit a pious person should make on a given transaction. Free market theory dictates there should be only one motive in economic culture, getting the max. But early colonists integrated piety and humility into their economic lives, spiritual considerations. One of his favorite stories is about the English merchant who couldn't stop confessing the sin of overcharging. Robert Kane, he recalls, was a very, very proper Puritan tradesman from London who made it big and set up trade here and then got caught for overpricing. The guy who made a big apology, I asked, recalling the peculiar episode of his book. He wrote endlessly, compulsively of his remorse, Balin replies. 50,000 words or so. Unbelievable, he exclaims. A 50,000 word will, which explores the whole business of revaluing, of cheating, and so forth. And I published his will, the whole thing, 158 pages in the original. And the question is whether you could be a proper Christian and make money. See, they were caught in a double bind. Max Weber started all this out with the Protestant ethnic and the spirit of capitalism. Weber argues that Protestants were driven to make money and create urban centers of wealth to display it because they were an external sign that one had been saved, chosen by God to enter into his grace and be redeemed. But in fact, most of the Protestant heretics who settled America believed that salvation was a matter between God and the individual, no matter what their bank balance, and that too much wealth could signify the exact opposite of sanctification, greed and spiritual degradation. Thus, the fair price controversy and what British economic historian R.H. Tawney called the Puritan double bind, a theory Balin has adopted. They were against exhibitionism, Bailey tells me. There were moral prohibitions against making as much as you possibly could. That's not good. You have to do it with constraints. Where's the constraints with our people? 50 cars, 500 whatever mansion. Oh, but thank Jesus for this and praise God that I have this or whatever. No, you're not. You're a sinner. You have a Protestant mindset and you are consumed by the spirit of capitalism. And this is all part of the practices of the colonists, to have the Aboriginal Indigenous people think like them. Once the people think like them, then they can do whatever it is that they want, because anything that the Indigenous people do is going to be based in a European mindset, European psychology, which gives the European everything that they need in order to do exactly what it is they're doing, that they've been doing. They know how to do this. They know what has to be done. They simply know that you get the Indigenous people to speak with a colonist mindset. And once they're speaking with the colonist mindset, then they know that they have the Indigenous people, lock, stock, and barrel, ready for sale. Right? Remember, and majority of this is coming from the Barbarous Years book by Bernard Balin. It's just an article on the book. It makes you think of the contrast with our hedge fund wealth worshiping culture, our conflicted attitude toward the 1%, envy and moral disapproval. Perhaps judges should sentence insider traders to write 50,000-word apologies while in prison. Speaking of price, made to think of the overarching question of early America, whether the barbarism, torture, murder, massacre, the ethnic cleansing that Balin describes in the barbarous years was the inevitable price we had to pay for the civilization that followed. When I asked the question of whether there could have been another way for the races to interact than mutual massacre, he brings up the few figures who emerge with honor from his chronicle of this savage period. Roger Williams. There were people who tried to have amicable race relations, he says, but it broke down again and again. I had always admired Roger Williams for his belief in religious toleration, which was realized in his Rhode Island colony, a place where all the dissenters and the dissenters from the dissenters could find a home to worship the way they wanted. And I'd admired him for standing as a reminder to certain contemporary zealots that America was a refuge for people who believe there should be separation between church and state, and that both church and state were better off for it, sentiments that entered into the First Amendment. But in Balin's accounts, Williams becomes a great American character as well. Not only was he close to the original inhabitants, he could speak some of their languages, and that the humility to recognize he could learn from them. I told Balin what an admirable character his Williams came across as. Well, the people at the time didn't think he was. He was a perfectionist, and no form of Christianity was good enough for him. He started out in the Church of England. He was a very strange man. He was a zealot. But didn't his zealotry lead to tolerance? It did, but this was not the big issue for him. He was trying to find out the proper form of Christianity. He started with the Church of England. And that was full of trouble. He then became a Baptist, and that was no good. He kept taking off all the clothes of organized Christianity till nothing was left, and he ended up in a church of his own with his wife and a few Indians. He's a zealot who went all the way. But he wasn't a zealot who persecuted others. No, he was not. That's why they hated him. He was complicated. He was well educated. He was a gentleman, but he was a nutcase. They didn't know what to do with him. Among his views, first of all, was that you do not seize Indian land. You don't own it. You don't take it. And to treat people civilly, and there is no purity in any stage of Christianity, hence toleration. What's nutty about that? You don't live in the 17th century. So you're not saying he's a nutcase from the perspective of the 21st century. No, he's certainly not. He became properly famous for all this later. At the time, people hated him because he was breaking up the unity of Christianity. One of his contemporaries had a wonderful phrase for him, namely, he is unlamb-like. No lamb, this guy. He sure wasn't, but he got close to the Indians, knew them well, and lived with them. Bailey's description of the many contradictory aspects of William's character stayed with me. A zealot, but tolerant, an outcast, but a self-outcast, willing to be seen as a nutcase in his time, a visionary sense of the way to a better future in a dark century. So much of the American character, like William's, emerges from the barbarous years, and that century has left its stamp on us. Not the zealous nutcase part, though that's there. I'm thinking of that compound word Balin likes about Williams, unlamb-like. That's us. The shocking savagery of America's early history. And again, that's the Smithsonian. And if the Smithsonians know, then all these people know what's up. All of them know what's up. The idea of the Aboriginal Indigenous people and the quote unquote savagery of the foreigners here is emulated in what we see today, called government, called prisons, called, taxing, called Planned Parenthood and all this stuff. All that is the same stuff, just with a different face on it. Just with a different face. It's the same stuff. They dress it up different so that the people can't put it together. They're thinking that people are working in their best interest because they have some office for them to go, throw father of a child under the bus and get a check. When that's the same Inquisition practices. And again, when you check majority of these institutions, right? When you check majority of these institutions, whether it's penitentiary, whether it's healthcare, all of it revolves around destabilizing, disenfranchising, and causing a mess in the lives of our people and in our families. While they can go over here and do whatever it is they're supposed to do under the guise of, they're the government, they're the whatever it is that the people assume that they are. If you have any questions, comments, emotional outbursts, you could put those in the chat. With the Drew Ali Day event, your condolences to you. With regard to the Drew Ali Day event, you could just send an email to Canaanland @gmail.com, and we'll try to figure out a way to get that to you. File's fairly big, so I don't know what's gonna go on with that. We'll see where that goes. Questions about why use their codes? Well, just like the Constitution, that stuff is there to regulate them. They've been using the stuff that they created to regulate us. But we have to start using their stuff against them. Hence, United States codes, Criminal Code of Canada, whatever the codes are. Because, we're behind. Right? We just got lapped 5 times and we're talking about win something. Right? You know, the fortunate part is that Moors are waking up consciously and starting to realize some of these issues that Moors have been talking about. You know, Christian black codes, dead statuses, and stuff like that. You know, the Europeans included are coming to certain realizations that stuff doesn't really apply to them, like rights and stuff like that. They don't have rights like that, right? I'm a Lithuanian national. My nation has been under occupation of Vatican City for the past 600 years. My nation were the very last ones in Europe to give in to the influence of Rome, right? And again, if you're talking about occupation for the past 600 years, that means people in Lithuania dropped the ball. Just like people in the Americas dropped the ball. You know, all these other places that are under colonization dropped the ball. Because there was obviously a campaign against the indigenous people of Lithuania that included Lithuanians, or Vatican wouldn't be able to do what it is that they're doing. Right? Yes. Like when they talk about the indigenous elders, the oral history, and that's the same stuff that you're talking about. They have a good memory of our nation prior to colonization. Okay, so why didn't you do anything about it? Right? There's no way that people have 600-year powers in land that's not theirs unless the people did nothing. The people had to do nothing for them to have that kind of power. Right? And again, like we're saying, the majority of the Europeans, they are very familiar and aware with Aboriginal indigenous culture, wherever it is. The Vatican knows about Lithuanian culture. They know that they colonized. They know that they colonized. You know? This is why, again, that when we go to actually I will read that to close out. When we go to divine warning by the prophet, that he was speaking to the nations of the world. He wasn't just speaking to blacks in America only. He was speaking to the nations of the world, because the nations of the world are colonized right now. So because the nations of the world are colonized, because they have relinquished their power to individuals who had no power, now absolute power corrupts. And you have corrupt people in the houses of government all over the planet. You have corrupt people in there using that power that they're supposed to have gotten from the people against the people. And then the people aren't doing anything about it. Right? And again, it's not, you know what I mean, go get some guns or whatever like that, because these people got a button that they could push and blow up the whole country. So you're not going to win on that side either. Right? There's no winning there. If they could send in a drone to fight, or send in a robot to fight you, you're losing. You got casualties, but they don't have casualties. They have robots. They strap a bomb on a robotic dog and send that in. Right? So some excerpts from Noble Drew Ali. The citizens of all free national governments, according to their national constitution, are all of one family bearing one free national name. Right? Lithuanian. It's from Lithuania. One family bearing one free national name. Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables and are subjects to all inferior names, abuses, and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them. So the people who didn't recognize their free national Lithuania became subjects of the Vatican and whoever else wanted to go over there and pull rank over them, because they had their free national jurisdiction. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the names and principles that allude to slavery. So no different than the Lithuanians, right? The group of Lithuanians violated the national constitution and started clinging to all these inferior names, whatever those inferior names are. Same thing that happened with the people on this side of the hemisphere, playing around that, you know, they're Indian, they're tribes, they're whatever this European said that they are, and have no connection to who they are for themselves. You who doubt whether I, the prophet, and my principles are right for the redemption of my people, go to those that know law in City Hall and among the officials in your government and ask them under an intelligent tone, and they would be glad to render you a favorable reply, for they are glad to see me bring you out of darkness into the light. Now again, this goes back again to all the nations of the world. If all the nations of the world went to their city hall and to their whoever's and start pressing them like you saw them doing throughout the world, European countries included, they don't want bailout packages and all that stuff because they realize that it's a fraud. And they took to the streets. Korea took to the streets. Japan took to the streets. And then COVID happened. Now everybody has to be trapped in their house and they can't go out there and protest unless they're anti-masker and all that stuff, which that ain't, you're not fighting for anything. It's anti-masker. Because guaranteed all those anti-masker whoever's out there are out there with a license. They're out there with colonial instruments, which justifies their fraudulent position. You can't be arguing slavery and then you got chains on, talking about, oh yeah, we're not slaves, we're free people. You got chains on. Please. That's not the argument. The wealth of all national governments, gold and silver and commerce, belong to the citizens alone. And without your national citizenship by name and principles, you have no true wealth. And I am hereby calling on all true citizens that stand for a national free government, right? All citizens who stand for a national free government, no matter where you're at. Do you stand for a national free government? If you do stand for a national free government, right, then Noble Jwali is calling on you to help him in the great missionary work, because I need all support from all true American citizens. Need support from all true American citizens, not just American citizens only, citizens throughout the world who know that something's wrong. They should be stepping up to stand up against what's wrong. Through your free national name, you are known and recognized by all nations of the earth. Through your free national name, you are recognized and known by all nations of the earth that are recognized by the said national government in which they live. Right? But again, like we're saying, the idea that you recognize your European brothers and sisters willingly calling themselves white when you know it's about national names needs to be told to them. No different than we're saying over here with people who know about nationality and birthrights, that they should be talking. The ones who know about nationality and birthrights should be the ones talking. It shouldn't be the people who are stateless talking. Why are they talking? They're only talking because the indigenous people aren't saying anything. So now these stateless people get to say whatever they want. And then when they say whatever they want, they don't get challenged on anything that they're saying. So now if you acquiesce, that stands as law. But that was a fiction that they just said. So it's not really standing as law, it's really standing as color. And then it's standing as color, and then that, like we were saying in the beginning, once color is going on, that's what gives the beast system power. And then we already know power is an illusion. So they really don't have it really like that. They really don't have it. But if the people aren't claiming, then you know the power's in limbo to be used by anybody who knows how to. And then from a science perspective, they know how to. That's why, like we were talking about at the beginning, they got power to define. They're gonna start saying that they're Americans, and then people are black and orange people, and places are called acronyms, and everybody's going with it. And then those gray-looking things that are in the sky, those are clouds, when those are really chemtrails, and people are messed up. Why put your questions in the chat? Why do they give this fiction non-fiction? The mindset is where the problem is. The people's mindset is not where it's supposed to be. Their mindset is on fictions. So they think that the fiction is non-fiction, but it's fiction. They've been told by all their nigger leaders that the fiction is real. We have a history called Black starting tomorrow. And that you're going to learn about all the people in the history that whatever in 29 days, depending on what year it is. And they only tell you about 2% of the people. And then the people aren't challenging them on, hold on a second, you said that is Black History Month, but all we're doing is talking about the same people forever. Nobody challenged anything. Till the more start correcting Black history and all that stuff and start, using this month to put out some real information relative to the people, knowing who they are and knowing their culture and all that stuff. Other than that, these people aren't getting anything but fiction. Do we need to have our own body politics and tribe? You can get tribe out the way, because tribe is colonial jurisdiction. Your own body politic is you live in a jurisdiction, you domicile in a jurisdiction, and there's you and some other people in that jurisdiction. You and those other people in that jurisdiction are the Aboriginal Indigenous people. If the Aboriginal and Indigenous people agree that that guy is our whatever, then that guy is who it is. And then you check that off the list because you don't need one of those. And then the other guy who's an expert in backflips, he's the backflips ambassador. And then he's voted on as that, and then you have all the different positions, the backflippers, the splitters, the whatever, and then now you have body politic. But now you have to exercise as that. You can't exercise as you're not that. So yes, we need body politics. And that's where Moors or competent people should be going, in getting together to form a body politic. Not like what you see going on, for example, without here, that nobody was talking nationality before we started talking nationality and birthrights. We start talking nationality and birthrights, and now there's 5 other different people around talking about nationality and birthrights instead of just getting down with us and talking about nationality and birthrights. They're trying to dissolve the body politic, because all they should do is get with the people who's already there talking like that. It's not rocket science, but you know, ego makes people turn to maniacs. And now they're the sultan of something, or they're the grand whatever of something, and then they're trying to tell everybody else how to do something when they just came yesterday. And the people who've been in that jurisdiction with a body politic, they're not paying any attention to that. And that's why, you know, we got issues. You know, so the suggestion we make is that you find Moors who are competent in the jurisdiction where you're at and unify with those Moors, especially if they're doing good and they're working with humanity, and you know, if you're in a jurisdiction where it's just you, then you be the Moor, you be the body politic, and you stand on your right. Right. And oh, hold on, I think I missed somebody's. All right. Clarity on mailing location and address. Mailing location is different from address. Yes. So mailing location is where you get mail to. Address is a corporate jurisdiction. And domicile, you just don't want anybody knowing where you lay your head. So you would get them to send mail to a mailing location opposed to an address. Because to get the stuff sent to an address means that you're sending it through the jurisdiction of the colonial powers by sending it to an address. Your domicile, where you sleep, nobody should know that unless you're inviting them over for something. But you don't want anybody sending something to you. You don't know them, but they know where you rest your head at night. These people are colonists. You don't want colonists knowing where you hid the gold and all that stuff. So they're about to murder you and steal your stuff. Right. PO box is a mailing location, a place where you send mail. You know, it's like we say with the statement, where do you live? In my body. Where do you want mail sent? Okay, that's a different question. You could send the mail over there. You're not going to send the mail where I live. Right. Yeah, but again, we're going, yes, get Consecrated Talisman, get all the books by Prince Uriel Bay. Yes, and those Moors knew how to run government. Moors today know how to run government too. The issue is people who do not want to get down with being governed. They want to do their own stuff. But it doesn't work like that. Can't claim that, oh yeah, we're a government, but you want to do your own stuff. No, you don't. You can't. If there's a government, it's so that people are governed. So people don't run amok and do madness. That's why you can't go with the colorable jurisdiction, because they're not government. That's why people do madness in there. That's why people do whatever they want. That's why a judge is gonna you know, give innocent people life, and then people who $50 billion they stole from some hedge fund or whatever, they get to go to some island, play with little boys. Because you can't want government and not want to be governed. An address is like an invitation. Why do the courts ask for address and not mailing location? Because they want jurisdiction. That's why we use the example of the mother who went to court and she was facing some jail time for something. And they were going back and forth, back and forth. They were going back and forth for months. And then the judge just finally said, okay, fine. Based on your answer to this question, you're either going home or we're kidnapping you right now. Where do you live? I don't live, I domicile. Case dismissed. And that was it. Because as soon as she gave an address, she would have admitted that I'm in your jurisdiction. After arguing for months that delegation of authority and you don't have jurisdiction and this isn't a real court and you got the stuff in the back, the seal of the corporation, you can't be government and all this stuff. Where do you get your authority to do whatever? All that argument would have went to shit if she would have said, oh, I live at 1577 3rd Street, the city of whatever, postal code, whatever. Oh, you just admitted the jurisdiction. But then again, if we're talking about addresses, ask yourself the question, how come courts don't have court addresses? They have business addresses. There's an exploding head emoji for you. How come the courts have business addresses, not court hours? They have business hours if they're a court. Shouldn't they have court hours? Same reason why they have business hours is the same reason why they ask you for an address. Which is why Noble Drew Ali, right? So essentially, unity is a product of trust, and trust is a product of self-love and self-knowledge. This is why Noble Drew Ali said, know yourself. Because once you know yourself, it means you love yourself. If you love yourself, then you probably trust yourself. If you trust yourself, then you could trust others. Because this is the point. The point is unity. But this is why Noble Drew Ali said the Moors are the true possessors and the founders of the Moroccan Empire, because that's a state, which is unity. Just look up unity. Tells you in the definition of unity, the law of estates. So in order to be united, you better have a state to be united about or united on. If you don't have an estate, then you're probably going to have some issues. Which is why our people could never be united, because they don't have an estate. They're talking about, yeah, unity, back to Africa, but they're in America. How are you going to have unity here if you're African? If you came over here on a slave ship from somewhere else, why are you fighting for unity here? Shouldn't you go back to where it is that they took you from and then say unity? Logically? But our people aren't logical because they have a European mindset. And they don't even know what they're thinking because they're not thinking. Somebody's thinking for them. They haven't detoxed yet to know that they don't even have their own mind. That's why every time you go to court, it's either they're taking your body or you're paying them finance. Because yes, it's a place of sacrifice. It's not law. Court is, oh, you want to touch little boys? Go against that wall right there. We're going to throw stones at you. That's court. Oh, you want to touch little girls? Which hand do you touch her with? Cut that hand off up to the elbow. Oh, you stole somebody? Stole something from somebody? Which hand do you touch it with? Cut your hand off. That's court. What they're saying court right now, those are administrative buildings for as cheating. Those are administrative buildings for ransoming, for anything illegal having to do with finance or money or stealing people's lives. That's what those are there for. That's why Moors are not supposed to be in those places, because they're supposed to be living by a certain standard where you don't even see them people. There's not even no opportunity of court happening. Right? Yeah, but remember, judge only sits on the bench, which is the bank, if they're dealing with admiralty. We're not on the sea right now. We're on land. We're already talking about banks and stuff like that. Banks are rivers. There's no bank outside. We go outside the courtroom. There's no water around here. It's all creating jurisdictions. As soon as you fall for the jurisdiction, again, mainly colonists play those games. Colonists who think they want to be smart try to sell you a package. Fraud orders, mails, issues as an agency conducting schemes. Well, again, you have to ask yourself, what is an order? So forget fraud. What is an order? And if you didn't order anything, if you didn't order, somebody comes on, yeah, I'm taking orders. They say, yeah, can I get a whatever like that? And then everybody else stays mute. When the order comes and somebody else is taking their stuff, you know that there's problems because nobody else made orders. And then making the order and taking the order is two different jurisdictions. And how is the person who's taking the orders giving orders? No, there's too many people out there with military show you military doesn't mean anything. Our biggest plight is economic security. You don't need no military because the military are really the Bloods and the Crips and the whoever that got guns out there. That's the military. They just need to be who they are. You like guns and stuff like that? Okay. Start training and stuff. Don't be going out there pulling up your shirt and I'll shoot you in the face if you whatever like that. Yeah, that ain't. It's not where your position is. If you like that stuff. Because like we said, even if we had a military right now, let's say we had a military right now, right? You think these colonists are gonna sit back while we, get militarized? They're not sitting back. They're definitely not sitting back. And then we claim that we got military. You got a nuke somewhere. We could just push a button, or they have that. And if they have bigger gun than you, is it really worth going into war with them? You'll probably lose before the war starts. The video of the European from last week is called Planet Lockdown. Her name's slipping me right now, but just Planet Lockdown, and then just scroll through the thing and you'll see her. I think her name is Fitz or something. Fitz or something. Planet Lockdown. Even if they're giving orders, are you demanding to know where they get off thinking you should have to comply? The fact that majority of the people are stateless, they have to comply. It's not a question of them, giving orders and, you got to listen to, you don't got nationality? You're listening to them. You're going to follow those orders. They started off from the top, but yeah, everybody please rise. And then what happens there? What everybody doing there? That's an order that they just got. And they did it. And that didn't even come from the judge. The guy in there. Just, everybody rise. Oh, all right. Everybody's rising. Oh, all right. That means everybody's in the jurisdiction in here. And nobody can be talking about anything about they're not taking orders because you just stood. And that wasn't even the judge that said stand up. That was some guy, came from the back. Oh yeah, here comes the judge, please rise. Everybody's standing up. And we're talking about we're not taking orders. Yeah, you are. Take that hat off. Oh, sorry about that, Mr. Bailiff guy. That's not even the judge giving you orders. And look at that. Hat off. What happened? I thought you were the black guys over there. What do you mean you? Yeah, oh yeah. YouTube took that down as soon as we pushed upload. They took that stuff down. As soon as upload got pushed, got taken down. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens with this one. Islam to all the Moors worldwide. No, keep in mind, because people get trapped with this thing. Republic is not for Moors. Republic is a Roman venue. Look up Republic. That's Roman. We're Aboriginal and Indigenous. We self-govern. We're not Roman, even though we're the first Romans. We're not Roman. You're not going to get any rights under some republic. Moors under a republic, so we got rights. No, you don't. You're just in a venue. You're choosing a venue that isn't your venue. Now that venue is better than a de facto venue. Yes, guaranteed. Republic over democracy, guaranteed. But Moors aren't, we're the Republic Moors. No, we're not. No, we're not. Right? When you're talking about Republic, you're talking about Europeans. That's their jurisdictions. Right? Yeah, that's what Lithuania and Greece and Italy and all these places, that's what they're supposed to be doing, bringing the Republic back. There's no bringing the Republic back here. They're foreigners. They need to go back to Europe. There's no bringing the republic back here. The only way they bring the republic back here is if all these Europeans move back to the 13 colonies and give all the indigenous people back their stuff. That's the only way that they enforce. There's not going to be republics going across the Western Hemisphere. No, the republics are the 13 colonies, if they're talking republic. That's why you can't make them talk republic without addressing that. If you're talking republic, Mr. European guys, running in the capital and all that stuff, you're talking about Eastern Seaboard only. 13 colonies. That's it. There's nothing else that's republic. Everything else is Aboriginal indigenous land. All right. No, it's not really that it needs more conversations about indigenous holistic farming. It just has to be done. Like the practice has to be happening. Just like we could have conversations about nationality all day, but if nobody's proclaiming their nationality, the conversations are useless. We could talk about nationality all day until people start saying, "Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to proclaim my nationality." Until that happens, it's just talking. And we talk the best. Well, anybody talk your ears off, especially when it comes to some BS. Right? Yeah, Chinese have sovereignty under their republic. Yeah, exactly. Because China's a corporation, just like all these states are corporations. So yeah, it's a republic. It's a corpse. Republic's still a corporation. It's not de facto. It's de jure, but it's still a corpse. It's a de jure corpse. The republic. Because the people who are tied to the republic are modern Europeans, not the Aboriginal and indigenous people. Oh, and zero infinity, that's exactly right. We do have paperwork of our own construct. We don't go to them to get some paperwork. We don't go to them to get some papers to say that we're Moors or we're free or whatever like that. We have our own. Because as Aboriginal and indigenous people, we have our own government. We are the government that's our own. We don't need to go to a notary. We go to any more around here and get them to be our witness. We don't need a notary to witness our stuff. So what if they don't recognize it or whatever? If they don't recognize it, they're proving that they're not government, because any government's going to recognize the will of the indigenous people, any true government. Right? First issue in anything is status. That's why the first thing they ask you is your name, no matter what. Hey, what's your name? No matter what you're doing. Hey, what's your name? And then if you're claiming that you're the gods of Egypt and all that stuff. Yeah, my name's John. I'm John. You're not no goddamn god of Egypt, you liar. You're a Negro. Black colored, some fiction. I'm Cujo L. Oh, I never heard that from somebody who looks like you before. Oh, you got a fez on? You got a turban? Oh, okay. Oh, your flag isn't, the black fist in the air and all that stuff. You got red flag, green 5-point star. Oh, okay. Oh, I see your status. I recognize your status. Republic is for those subject under a kingdom. A Moor can use a republic to straighten them up. The Republican form of government is what any colonials are supposed to be living under. If the colonials are living in somebody else's land, it should be as a republic, not a democracy. If they're living in someone else's land as a democracy, that's not government, it's a corpse. And the people have to know that it's a corpse. If they don't, then they're about to get everything that Negro, black, coloreds, and whoever else wanted to play, not hold these people to republic standards gets. Because they should be holding people to republic standards as far as the people who are part of that government and the people who are in their own government. So, any more questions out there? Who said Carthage was a republic? Not Carthaginians, I bet you. The story is, that's just like we would say, United States is a republic. No, it's not. That's a democracy. No, United States is a republic because, no, United States is a democracy. Who said it? Who said Carthage is a republic? Did the ancient Egyptians say that we're a republic? Or did somebody see them practicing government that the people ran and said, oh, they're a republic because people are running their government? Republic is government run by the people. Get it? Most definite. The people are the ones who set the standard. They're the ones who say, we want that individual to represent us and that individual is supposed to go represent them. Right? Yes, that's a republic. But that's not the only form of government run by the people. Right? That's the most known form. That's the most acknowledged form. That's the most exercised form. But there's other forms of government. Right? Just like the proclamations state that Moors have a theocracy. They didn't say the Moors are a republic in all those proclamations. Yeah, Mother's Day, United States of America is a republic. And the Constitution is a republic. That ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm not United Statesian. I'm a Moor. We govern ourselves. We got principles. We got Quran. We got our own constitution. We don't need these people. We got, matter of fact, we got multiple Moorish constitutions. We don't need them. We don't need their stuff. And like we said, if we're talking republic, that means 13 colonies. That doesn't mean mainland. So if somebody's saying republic and then they're talking about, yeah, Seattle, the Republic of Washington and all that stuff, no, you're a fiction. That's a lie. Because the republic is only 13 colonies. You can't even get past the 13 colonies being a republic. As soon as you tiptoe over the 13 colonies border, now you're playing games. No, saying we're a republic, saying that we are a republic, right, implies that the people are the government. If the people are the government, why do they have licenses from somebody else? Why don't they have their own stuff? Obviously, they're not a republic. Why do they have instruments from people who they're complaining about if they're a republic? And then how are they going to bring the republic back if they themselves aren't in a status to even make a claim? No, it's all the name game stuff, going back again to European colonization and having European mindsets, and then not checking what's really going on. Going with what the status quo. Status quo might not be right. Status quo might be colored. How would one change their nationality? Well, first of all, international law says everybody has a right to a nationality and you could change it anytime. And international law being American Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, American Declaration of Rights and the Duties of Man, United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, rights of a child, rights of human beings. Everybody has a right to a nationality. The purpose of Noble Drew Ali was to exactly do what you're saying. But what it really is a correction of nationality, because we're not changing our nationality when we say, oh, we came out of slavery, or we got a slave name, so we want to change our name to indigenous name or African name or whatever like that. That's a correction, because the names that we have as colonized people, as subjugated people, aren't nationalities. Black, Negro, colored, African, whatever, those aren't nationalities. So we're not changing a nationality. We're actually correcting. And the correction really starts with your mindset before some papers that you got from some Moors over there. So we suggest people go to rvbaypublications.com and get some studying in so they can fix their mindset before they start talking about nationalities and changing nationalities or whatever. Because if you let's just say you went with that, oh yeah, I changed my nationality, okay, fine, here's the paper, change your nationality, then you change your nationality, then you're going around talking about, yeah, I changed my nationality or whatever like that. And so, hey, so what's your nationality? Oh yeah, I changed my nationality, I'm Frida L, because I changed my nationality. You're actually in error, because that was a correction. That wasn't a change. That was a correction. But start with the studying, rvbaypublications.com, and you'll get it. Societas Republica it al Americanos Estates. Yeah, United States of America Republic in Spanish. United States of America Republic. Republic for us is a concept. Republic for us is a concept. It's not something for us to adopt. It's a concept for us to recognize what true government is. True government, that the people select their representatives, is republic. So because some Moors vote for a Moor to be their leader or whatever like that, that doesn't mean that that's republic. Conceptually, the actions that were taken to get that Moor in office is Republican form. It's true, it's de jure, but it doesn't have to be called a republic. If anything else comes up, you could email canaanlandguide@gmail.com. CANAANLANDGUIDE@gmail.com. Any questions or anything else? Peace and love to all the Moors worldwide. Study, study, study. Keep the Prophet up front, and we'll be all right. We'll just close out with the prayer. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, noble Juali, Islam, Ashe. Peace and love to all the Moors worldwide. Honors to all. Give thanks for the time, energy, and the build. Peace and love, Moors, Islam.